The wind dragged dry earth across the plains, like it was trying to bury the past. Each gust scratched her skin, grit clinging to her lashes, choking her breath. Her boots had long since fallen apart, now just strips of leather tied around her. Feet. She walked with a limp, one side bloodied where a stone had torn her heel 2 nights ago. But pain didn't matter anymore. Nothing did except getting somewhere. Anywhere, she hadn't eaten in 2 days. The last town had run her off with spit and stones, yelling words she stopped hearing long ago. Whore, thief, stray. Maybe they were right. She'd slept in pig pens and stolen crusts. But she hadn't asked to be born into the kind of life where survival meant shame. Her name was Willa. No one called her that anymore, dotting her hands. She clutched a tiny brown leather shoe child-sized. It was the last thing she had from her sister, not the baby. Her older sister, Mary, long gone now. Willa sometimes dreamed she'd walk into a town, and Mary would be there clean, smiling, hands open. But the shoe was all that ever remained. A shape emerged on the horizon. She squinted, dust burning her eyes. A ranch, isolated, faded paint, broken fence lines, a barn half collapsed like it had taken a punch from God and never stood back up. The house was 2 stories, but the top windows were dark and hollow, like eyes that had seen too much. She hesitated at the gate. The sign read, "Trespassers will be shot." It wasn't decorative. It wasn't the sort of place that pretended. Still, she opened the gate. It creaked like a dying thing. Her feet dragged through the dirt path. Chickens scattered near the porch. No dog barked. No welcome. She knocked once. Silence, and the door creaked. Open. A man stood in the shadows. Tall, built like a man used to swinging axes and breaking horses. His hat cast a shade over most of his face, but what she saw froze her. The right half of his face was twisted, a scar like melted wax stretching from his temple to his chin. One eye was cloudy, but it still looked at her sharp as a blade. "What do you want?" He asked, voice dry as gravel. "Shelter," she said. "I'll cook, clean, work. I don't want charity." He didn't move. "I just need a place to sleep," she added. "I'll earn it." His gaze lingered. "Long, heavy, then, don't. Need a cook. Don't need anyone." She gripped the shoe tighter. "Then just let me rest a day. I'll be gone by sunup." Still silence. Then he stepped back. Just a fraction. "Enough." She entered. The house was clean, but not warm. Sparse. No curtains. No pictures. A rifle sat on the table like a place setting. The man closed the door behind her, and the wind was gone. "Rules," he said. "No stealing. No snooping. No talking about the scar." She nodded. "What's your name?" "Willa." He didn't give his. He pointed to a room near the stairs. "There, don't lock the door." She stepped inside. A narrow bed, a wash basin, no mirror. She sat. Her legs shook. The silence pressed around her like a second skin. Later, she found the kitchen and tried to make something. There were dried beans, salt, some flour. She boiled the beans too long. They stuck to the pot. When he came in, he said nothing. Just ate. No thank you. No insult. Just the scrape of spoon against tin. When he left, she washed the pot and sat in the dark, staring at the cold stove. That night, a coyote howled outside. The window. She didn't sleep. Her fingers clutched the shoe beneath the covers. She whispered her sister's name. It felt like betrayal to say it out loud. Not the next morning. She found the man outside repairing a fence post. He moved with economy precise. Efficient, no wasted motion. She watched a while before asking, "You want help?" He didn't answer. So she picked up a hammer. They worked in silence. Her arms burned, palms split, but she kept going. By dusk, they'd repaired 5 posts and a rail. "You work like someone who's been running," he said finally. She stared at him. "And you look like someone who stopped." A pause. He actually gave the ghost of a grin. "Fair enough." That night, he poured 2 cups of coffee and gave her one. Still no sugar, but the gesture felt enormous. She sipped slow, trying not to let it warm her too much. On the 3rd day, she mended a ripped saddle strap. He watched her fingers, impressed. "Where'd you learn that?" "Horse trader. Stayed a week before he tried to trade me." And I stabbed him in the leg with a fork. His laugh was sudden and sharp. Not cruel, just startled, like he hadn't heard himself make that sound in a long time. After that, things changed. Just slightly. He showed her how to oil the rifle. She didn't ask why he needed it so close. She already guessed. She found his scars extended down his neck, disappearing beneath his shirt. One morning he said, unprompted, "Fire, 5 years ago." Barn lit up with me inside. "Wife?" she asked, quietly. He nodded. Gone. There was a silence that stretched wide enough to swallow the room. He poured more coffee. By the end of the week, he came in from the fields and handed her a box. Inside was a new pair of boots. Not new, but clean, stitched solid, and her size. "I can't take these," she said. "You earned them," he replied. "I don't give handouts." She put them on. They fit like a breath. Later that night, the sky turned black with an incoming storm. Thunder cracked over the horizon. Willa bolted upright in bed, drenched in sweat, heart racing. Her father's voice echoed in her ears, drunken yelling, fists, the door slamming. Her body shook like the ground beneath her. She opened the door. He was sitting by the fire, sipping coffee, rifle across his lap. "I heard," he said. She sat across from him, trembling. "You don't have to talk about it," he offered. "I can't sleep when it storms," she whispered. "Too many memories." He nodded. "Same." They sat in silence. A fire popped, thunder rolled, rain slapped the windows. He didn't look at her, but he passed her a blanket. She took it. "I don't know how to be in a place where I'm not scared," she said, almost ashamed. "You learn," he said. "Pain teaches you how to breathe through fire." She didn't answer, but she stayed until the storm passed. In the morning, she found eggs in the chicken coop, cleaned the barn floor, and patched a broken chair leg. He didn't comment, but she caught him watching her as she moved through the house like she belonged there. That afternoon, a stranger rode up the path. Willa froze at the window. The man had a jagged tattoo on his hand, a mark she knew. One from the gang. Her heart thumped so loud she thought the stranger might hear. She backed away. The rancher opened the door and stood in the doorway. Tall, unflinching. "Looking for someone?" he asked. "Maybe," the rider said. "Girl, brown. Hair, small. Might have come through here. Doesn't sound familiar." The rider scanned the property. His eyes were hungry, mean. "You sure, old man?" The rancher took a step forward. "You deaf?" The stranger's hand went to his belt, but stopped short. He saw the rifle leaning near the door, the scarred face, the eyes that didn't blink. "I guess I'm sure," the stranger said, spitting into the dirt. Then he turned and rode off. Willa stood by the stairs, shaking. The rancher shut the door and looked at her. "Want to tell me what that was?" She didn't answer. He walked past her into the kitchen. "He'll be back. Next time, he won't." Knock. She sat at the table. "I should leave. I brought this." "No," he said. "You just found it again." She stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" He hesitated. "Because I was burned once, and no one helped me." She blinked hard. Her voice caught. "I don't know how to trust that." He nodded. "Me neither." Outside, the wind picked up. Another storm whispered across the plains. Inside, two people scarred. Silence sat in the glow of a fire, pretending just for a moment that the world could be different. The morning sun peeled back the gray sky like a scab. The light didn't warm, it simply revealed. Dust clung to every surface. Willa stood in the yard, sleeves rolled up, dragging buckets from the well, with hands blistered and raw. Her arms ached, but she didn't stop. Each muscle she pushed through reminded her that she was still alive, still here, and not cowering in some alley or waiting for fists in the dark. This was different. The pain here had purpose. The rancher, whose name she still hadn't learned, moved with the quiet precision of someone used to solitude. He spoke in grunts, nods, and sideways glances. Most days he said nothing at all, and yet something was changing. In the way he passed her tools without asking. In the way he stood close enough to shield her from wind, but never touched. It wasn't kindness, exactly. It was something older, something cautious. Like he was feeling his way through an unfamiliar room in the dark. Willa watched him hammer a fence rail into place. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms etched with old burns and workman's calluses. He'd been strong once, still was, but life had carved him down to a sharper edge. When he worked, the scarred side of his face caught the light, skin warped by flame, lips pulled slightly askew, one eye fogged over. Yet nothing about him seemed broken, just changed. REFORGED. She took a chance. How did it happen? He didn't look up. The fire, she clarified. What started it? For a while he kept hammering, the silence filling the space between. Them like smoke. Lightning, he said at last. Summer storm. Hit the barn. Roof caught fast. My wife and I were inside. She swallowed. I'm sorry. He gave a short nod. Not like he accepted her sympathy, more like he acknowledged. It existed. I got out, he continued, voice low. She didn't. Willa gripped the water bucket tighter. She didn't know what to say. He didn't ask for pity. But still, the weight of it settled heavy in her chest. Maybe grief recognized its own kind. I had a little sister, she said. Quietly, her name was Mary. He turned his head just slightly, listening. She was older than me. Kind, brave. She tried to protect me when my father drank. Hid me in closets. Took the beatings meant for me. One night, he found us both. I ran. She didn't make it. The wind moved between them like a whisper. He didn't offer condolences. But he didn't turn away either. Back inside the house, she patched a ripped shirt he'd tossed aside. Her stitching wasn't perfect, but it held. When she handed it to him that evening, he looked at the seam, then at her. You're good at mending things, he said. She shrugged. I had to be. Later that night, the fire cracked low in the hearth. He sat across from her, polishing, his rifle in slow, methodical movements. She picked up a piece of firewood and set it down beside the stack. Their silence felt different now, not emptiness, but shared breath. You ever think about leaving? She asked. He didn't stop working. Used to, he replied. Thought about heading east, starting over. What stopped you? He met her gaze, both eyes clear in the flicker of firelight. This is where she's buried. Willa looked. Away, her throat tightened. That's a good reason. They sat there until the coals turned to embers. The days passed like chapters. They repaired the barn roof together. She watched him on horseback, breaking in a young Mustang. He was fierce. In motion, alive in a way he never was inside those four walls. Dust flew, the horse bucked, and he held fast scarred hand tight on the reins, legs planted like roots in the earth. When the horse finally settled, Willa clapped. He grinned full, unguarded for the first time. It changed his face. Made him look almost young. He dismounted and offered her the reins. Your turn? She shook her head. I don't ride. You do now. The saddle was high. The leather creaked beneath her. The horse shifted, impatient. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. You won't fall, he said. She did twice the third time. She stayed on. That night, her thighs ached, and she laughed when she sat. He chuckled, shaking his head. Told you it hurts. She grinned back. You didn't warn me enough. He brought out a bottle of old whiskey. They shared a sip, then another. It burned down deep, warm and sharp. Why haven't you told me your name? She asked. He looked into the fire, lips tightening. Because names matter, he said. Once you give it to someone, they can hold it against you. She nodded. Then don't give it. I already know who you are. He looked at her, then really looked. Who am I? Someone who didn't turn me away. He poured her another. Shot. They drank in silence, and the distance between them felt less like a wall and more like a bridge not yet crossed. The next morning, he handed her a knife. Coyote tracks near the co-op. Want to learn how to track? She nodded, and they moved together into the brush. He showed her how to read bent grass, faint prints, claw marks on the bark. It felt like decoding a secret language one, where every mark told a story. She followed him through gullies and dry creek beds, eyes wide, breath steady. You were born out here, she said. Near enough. No family? Had a brother. Died in a card game. Drank too much, picked a fight. With the wrong man. Sounds like someone I knew, she said softly. Same man? Could be. They tracked the coyote to a den, but left it alone. Too small to be the one killing chickens, he muttered. It's got pups. She watched him walk away, rifle slung low, hands relaxed. He could have shot, but he didn't. She wondered if he saw himself in that mother coyote scarred, watchful, still dangerous when cornered. That evening, she made stew. Not fancy, but rich. She found an old spice jar tucked in the back of the cupboard and added it. He noticed. Tastes like something I almost forgot, he said. She smiled. That's the cinnamon. He stared at her over the rim of his tin. Cup, you know you could leave. No one's stopping you. I could, she said, but I'm tired of running. He nodded slowly. Then stay? Just don't expect much. I expect quiet, safety, a roof. That's more than I had. And then, at last, he said it. Colt. She blinked. What? My name, he said. Colt McAllister. It settled in her like warmth. Like breath. Colt. She said it once, just to feel it on her tongue. He didn't flinch. The next day brought rain. Heavy and cold, pounding against the roof like hoofbeats. She watched it from the window while Colt chopped wood. Shirt soaked, hair dripping, hands steady. She stepped outside with a towel and held it out. He took it, drying his hands, and for a moment their fingers touched. She didn't move. Neither did he. His voice dropped low. You're not afraid of me? I was, she said. But not anymore. He looked at her then, like she was something fragile and dangerous all at once. I haven't touched a woman since the fire, he admitted. I haven't trusted a man since my father, she said. They stood like that for a long time, rain falling between them. Then, slowly, they stepped back. The night passed without storm, but neither of them slept. At dawn, a sound came from the hill. Hoofbeats, a single. Rider. Colt stepped outside, rifle ready. Willa watched from the doorway, her heart already racing. It was the man with the tattoo again. The one from before. He stopped 10 yards from the porch and spat. Thought I'd pay another visit. You sure you don't have anything of mine hiding inside? Colt didn't flinch, Leave. I will. Just as soon as I search the place. Try. There was steel in Colt's voice now. Final. Dangerous. The man smirked. You really gonna shoot over some whore you picked up off the road? Willa stepped forward then. Say that again, she said, voice calm but sharp. The man sneered. Didn't know you had claws. Colt cocked the rifle. You got 5 seconds. The man's smirk vanished. He turned his horse. This ain't over, he called. Yeah, Colt muttered. It is? They watched him disappear into the horizon. Willa stood beside Colt, trembling. I should have told you, she whispered. You just did, he said. That night, as they sat by the fire again, Colt handed her the rifle. You'll need to learn. She looked at it. I'm not a fighter. He met her eyes. You are now. And as she held the weapon in her hands, feeling its weight, its purpose, she knew something had changed. Not just in the world around her, but in herself. She wasn't running anymore. She was standing her ground. The heat broke just after sunrise, split by a wind that carried the smell of copper and smoke. Willa stepped out onto the porch and scanned the ridge beyond the pasture. Something had changed in the air, something taut and electric. She tightened. The shawl around her shoulders, even though the morning wasn't cold. Colt was already at the fence line, hammering in new rails, his movements stiff. He hadn't said more than a few words since the tattooed man had returned days ago. The silence between them wasn't hostile, it was protective. Willa knew Colt wasn't a man to speak his fear. He wore it like armor, hidden under his quiet. His distance, his methodical way of controlling the world with hammers, horses, and hard labor. But something had been knocked loose when that man rode up the hill. The past didn't stay buried in these parts. It had a way of sniffing you out, just when you'd begun to believe it couldn't. She walked toward him, boots kicking up dry. Dust. He didn't look up as she approached, but she could tell by the twitch in his jaw that he knew she was there. You didn't sleep again, she said. Neither did you. I kept thinking about what he said about coming back. Colt lifted the hammer, brought it down hard. He will. You think he'll bring others? He already has. The words sank into her like stones. Willa stared at the distant trees, fingers curling into fists. She wasn't afraid of pain, not anymore. But she was afraid of losing this quiet rhythm, this life she'd barely begun to build. Colt wasn't just her protector. He had become her mirror. In him, she saw a man who had clawed back from fire. In her, he saw someone still burning, but refusing to be consumed. I want to fight, she said. He turned, surprised. I won't ask you to. You don't have to. He studied her face, as if measuring her certainty. Then he nodded. Then we train. They began that afternoon. Colt set up cans on fence posts, handed her the rifle. She braced it awkwardly. Cheek too low, stance too narrow. He corrected her without speaking, adjusting her hands, shifting her shoulders, guiding her elbows. She tried again, missed. You're flinching, he said. I'm not used to being the one holding the gun. You better get used to it. She narrowed her eyes, took a breath, and fired again. The can tumbled. Her lips curved. Better? He offered the faintest grin. Better. Every evening they trained. By day they worked, repaired the roof, reinforced the doors, set traps in the brush. At night she cleaned the guns, rubbed oil into the handles, memorized how they felt in. Her grip, her body grew stronger, leaner. The blisters on her palms became calluses. She no longer jumped at sudden sounds. Her dreams no longer paralyzed her, but not all wounds left the body. One night, after a long day fixing the well pump, Colt sat on the porch watching the stars. Willa brought him coffee. He took it without thanks. He never said thank you. But The way he drank slowly, the way his shoulders softened slightly, that was his gratitude. She sat beside him. You ever think we'll be safe? She asked. He didn't answer at first. I think we'll survive, he finally said. That's not the same. It's what we've got. She looked at him, trying to find the man beneath the scars, beneath the silence and strength. What happens if they come and you don't make it? His jaw tensed. I'm not asking because I doubt you, she added. I'm asking because if you fall, I need to know how to stand. He turned to her then, eyes burning in the dark. If I fall, you fight. You don't beg. You don't run. You shoot until there's no bullets left. Then you keep going. She nodded slowly. What if I lose everything? You already lost everything once. And you're still here. The wind howled then, low and steady, like a warning. The next day, the first sign came. Smoke on the horizon. Too much for a campfire. It twisted into the sky in thick black coils. Colt walked to the barn and returned with 2 satchels, one full of ammo, the other with canned food, a map, and 2 worn pistols. We're not running, she said. No, he said. We're preparing. They barricaded the lower windows, set tripwires near the tree line, sharpened the fence posts to wicked points. Willa felt like someone out of an old war story, dirty, blood-chapped, focused, but she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Not when Colt looked at her like she was something worth fighting for. That night, thunder rumbled far off in the distance. The storm was real now on the horizon, pushing closer. She went to bed, but didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about Mary, about the girl she used to be, the one who cried in the barn and begged God to change her fate. That girl was gone. And maybe that was a mercy. Sometime around dawn, Colt shook her awake. They're here. She dressed fast boots, shirt, holster. The rifle was already by her bed. She followed him outside. The wind carried dust and ash. 5 riders on the ridge, all armed. All with the same slow, predatory confidence. Colt stood beside her, rifle cradled. The one in the middle is the leader. Tattoo? She asked. He nodded. You shoot him, Colt said. First chance you get. She didn't ask what would happen if she missed. The riders came slow, dragging out the moment, savoring the fear they expected to find. But Willa didn't tremble. She met their eyes. She didn't blink. The tattooed man reined in his horse, just yards from the porch. Told you I'd come back, he called. Colt stepped forward. And I told you it was over. The man laughed. Thing is, you're protecting a liar, a thief, a runaway. She's not yours, Colt said. She ain't yours either. She's hers. That gave the man pause, just for a moment. Then he spat and drew his pistol. The crack of Colt's rifle was instant. The man's shoulder snapped back. He fell off the horse, screaming. Chaos erupted. Shots rang through the dry air. Colt ducked behind a post. Willa dropped to her knees, aimed, fired. One rider fell from his horse, with a sound like breaking glass. Another circled wide, trying to flank. Willa saw him coming, steadied her hands, squeezed the trigger. The bullet missed. He took aim. A second shot rang out Colt's. The man dropped. 2 remained. They turned, fired wildly, then kicked their horses into retreat. One dragged the tattooed man with him. They disappeared over the ridge, leaving behind the echo of their failure. Willa stood shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from rage, from the wild certainty that she had changed something permanent in herself. Colt limped toward her. Blood soaked his sleeve. She ran to him. You're hit, she gasped. Just a graze, he muttered, swaying. She guided him inside, tore a strip from her shirt, cleaned the wound. He winced but said nothing. She wrapped the arm, hands steady. "You saved me," he said, voice hoarse. "You saved me first." He met her eyes. "You didn't run. Neither did you." Outside, the storm had passed. Inside, the quiet returned not. Fearful, not empty, but full of breath, of life, of something new. Later, when the fire burned low and Colt slept in the chair, Willa sat beside him, cleaning a rifle. Her hands moved with practiced ease. She looked over at him, at the man who had given her more than a roof, more than protection. He had given her a reason to stay, a reason to fight out the wind tapped at the window, soft now. Like it had changed. "It's mine," she whispered into the night. "I'm not who I was." And the night whispered back, "Neither is he." ChatGPT said, "The morning after the firefight was quiet in the way that follows devastation thick, breathless and solemn. The air still smelled of gunpowder and sweat, but the wind had softened. Birds returned to their calls, cautious at first, then confident. Willa stood at the edge of the porch, watching the trail the riders had vanished down. Colt slept inside, his bandaged arm resting on the armchair, his breathing even. For the first time in weeks, she let herself exhale fully. The chickens clucked as if nothing had happened. One of them, the stubborn hen she'd named Sheriff, scratched near the coop, unaware of how close the world had come to ending. Willa knelt beside the bird and whispered, "We made it." The words didn't sound real. Her hands still bore the grime of gun oil and blood. Her heart, though calmer, wasn't ready to stop looking over her shoulder. Survival had trained her to flinch at peace. She busied herself with the normal things, hauling water, feeding the horses, washing the blood-streaked porch. The routine steadied her. Every task was a claim to the life they'd built here. A silent declaration, "We belong." When Colt finally stirred, he didn't call out, just walked into the kitchen and poured himself coffee, wincing slightly. Willa handed him a tin cup, then sat opposite him. Their eyes met. No words were needed. They'd both seen the worst of each other, now fear, rage, mercy, grit, and neither had run. "You sure it's over?" she asked quietly. "No," he said, "but they'll think twice before coming back." She nodded, fingers wrapped. Around her cup. "Still want to leave?" he asked, studying her expression. "I don't know," she answered honestly. There was never a plan beyond staying alive. Colt leaned back, the chair creaking beneath his weight. "This place, it's not much. The land's tired. Roof leaks. Still smells like smoke. After every rain. It's the only place that's ever felt like mine," she said. His gaze lingered on her, slow and steady. "And maybe it is." She didn't reply, but the tears in her eyes answered for her. That afternoon, they buried the bodies. The two men who hadn't made it off the land were lowered into the earth with no ceremony, no words. Willa didn't know their names and didn't want to. But as she shoveled dirt, she didn't feel triumph. Just the dull ache of what violence. Left behind, even when justified. Colt stood beside her in silence, hat in hand, the sun casting long shadows between them. Afterward, they returned to the barn to fix what had been broken during the attack. A shattered hinge, a cracked door, splintered beams. Willa climbed the ladder and hammered in nails while Colt steadied the frame below. She glanced down at him. "We make a decent team," he grunted. "You do all the climbing. I do all the watching." "Maybe you're the smart one," she said, laughing softly. As the sun dipped behind the hills, they lit a small fire out front and shared a quiet supper. Beans, cornbread, and silence. The good kind. Not heavy like before. Lighter. Familiar. Safe. "You ever think about rebuilding the barn?" she asked. All the time, he said. Just never thought I'd have help. You've got it now. He looked up at her, and something passed between them, simple, sacred, unsaid. Days turned into weeks. The wounds healed inside, out. The barn took shape slowly. Each nail, each board placed with care. Willa painted the front door of the house a soft blue, something she'd never seen in this part of the world. It stood out against the dry earth, old and unapologetic. She liked that. Colt never asked her to stay, but he built a place for her in every way that mattered. Cleared out space in the root cellar for her things. Left extra coffee for her in the morning. Hung a spare hat by the door where her scarf used to hang. One evening, Willa returned from gathering firewood to find Colt sitting by a small wooden cross near the barn. The grave. His wife. The sun had nearly set, casting gold across the field. She stood behind him. You come here often? Not as much as I should. Willa hesitated. You want to be alone? He shook his head. No. She sat beside him, brushing dust from her knees. You loved her? I did. And now? He turned to her. Now I'm learning how to live again. She said nothing, but she reached for his hand. He let her. They stayed like that until the sky turned black. That night, she lit a candle and pulled out the old baby shoe, the one she'd carried. Since she'd fled, she held it in her lap, running her fingers over the fraying edges. Colt sat down beside her. That hers? My sister's, she said. I've been carrying it so long I forgot what it meant. You ready to let it go? I think I am. She walked outside and dug a small hole beneath the apple tree that had just started to bloom again. She placed the shoe inside and covered it gently. No prayer, no sobs, just breath. She felt lighter. Colt watched her from the steps, his expression unreadable. She'd be proud, he said. I hope so. The next morning, Willa woke early. The world was silent but alive. The scent of dew on dirt, the stretch of sunlight across her window. She rose, braided her hair, pulled on her boots. Outside, the land waited. So did he. She found him fixing the saddle strap she'd once mended. He looked up as she approached. I've been thinking, she said, about building a garden. A garden? Vegetables, herbs, maybe flowers. Something that grows. He considered this, then nodded. All right, you'll help me dig? I'll help you plant. They spent the day mapping out rows, clearing rocks. She laughed when he pretended not to know a trowel from a hoe. He rolled his eyes, but she caught the corner of his mouth turning up. Later, she stood back and surveyed the patch. It wasn't much yet, just soil and hope. But that was enough. As the stars returned and the crickets began their evening chorus, they sat on the porch again. The same chairs, the same cups of coffee, but everything had changed. I never thought I'd have this, she whispered. This? Colt asked. A place. A man who didn't use his hands to hurt. A future. He looked down at her hands, rough, scarred, strong. You built it. I didn't do it alone. He reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. Willa? Yes? I don't know what this is between us, but I don't want to lose it. You won't, he hesitated. Even if it's not perfect? She smiled. Nothing worth having ever is. And then, without fear, she leaned in and kissed him. Not as thanks, not as farewell, but as a beginning. His hand found hers, and the world held still. Inside the house, the fire crackled. Outside, the wind curled through the grass, whispering its approval. The next day, she rose before dawn. She walked the field alone, boots sinking into the soft earth. She touched the fence post they'd mended together, patted the marae that had finally let her ride. paused beside the cross near the barn. She no longer heard the voices that used to follow her in dreams, no longer jumped at shadows. The ghosts had faded. When she returned, Colt was in the doorway, watching, waiting. She stopped before him. "This is home," she said. "It always was," he replied. And she knew then, without doubt or fear, that she would never leave. The past had taken much from her family, innocence, years. But here, in this battered place with a man who carried his own ruins with grace, she had built something sacred. A garden, a promise, a life, not because she was rescued, but because she chose to stay, because they both did. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that broken people can find peace, that scars can mean survival instead of shame, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the home we find is the one we never dared to dream.